You don't expect a game about cats and a traveling witch to punch this hard? Witch and BunCats might wear a pastel, storybook disguise, but under the surface, it's a thoughtful, tactical roguelite with teeth. And it's the kind of game that quietly demands your attention. The story starts in a peaceful village of cats, where everything revolves around one precious resource: food. Cat food cans, to be exact. It's their survival, their economy, their identity. So when a mysterious swarm of monsters shows up and steals everything without warning, it's a full-blown crisis. Luckily, a young witch just happens to be passing through. She's not part of this world, not really, but she's the kind who won't stand by and do nothing. That's where you come in. This isn't some slow, passive management sim or idle, cozy game. Witch and BunCats blends fast-paced action combat with something you don't usually see front and center: inventory strategy. Every run, you're dealing with enemies on one side and a backpack that's essentially its own mini-game on the other. It's not just about what you bring, but how you pack it. Grid space matters. Item positioning matters. Some gear only works when it's adjacent to others, or when arranged in specific patterns. It feels a bit like solving a puzzle box every time you level up. And the way those pieces click together adds a ton of satisfaction when it works. The backpack mechanic doesn't slow things down. It gives your runs texture. Every decision feels more intentional. Do you make room for an extra healing item, or squeeze in a synergy that boosts your attack skill? You start to think in layouts, in builds, in combinations, not just in stats. Combat itself is sharp and responsive. You get to bring 2 to 4 different attack types into battle, each one with its own flavor and upgrade path. Some work better in tight quarters, others give you crowd control or let you kite around the screen. It's flexible, and that flexibility makes each build feel different without being overwhelming. You're not drowned in endless modifiers or forced to spend hours theory crafting. You're encouraged to adapt, to experiment, to find your groove. Then there's the weapon variety. You've got axes, swords, spears, and more. And each comes with its own special attack skill, powered by a limited energy pool. These aren't throwaway abilities. They can interrupt enemies, turn the tide of a tough fight, or give you just enough edge to survive a multi-wave ambush. Using them well becomes part of your rhythm, another layer of decision-making that adds depth without clutter. And then there's the world itself. Every run takes place on a procedurally generated map, created through a custom terrain algorithm. That means the layout shifts with each game. Different biomes, different pathing, different risks and rewards. You're not just progressing from stage to stage, you're planning your journey. Should you head toward the area with better loot but heavier resistance? Or stick to the safer path and hope you can gear up later? It's small, but those decisions stack, and they make each run feel more personal. Despite the tactical lean, this is still a game with heart. The cats aren't just quest markers or background props, they're a part of the emotional core. Between fights, you get little moments: rescued villagers, quiet chats, the rebuilding of a community. The art is warm, like something from a picture book. But even those cozy scenes are earned. They're breathing space in a game that otherwise keeps you on your toes. And that's what makes Witch and BunCats so engaging. It isn't trying to wow you with scale or spectacle. It wins you over through smart mechanics, satisfying layers, and a vibe that manages to be charming and challenging at the same time. It respects your time, gives you room to think, and then hits you with just enough chaos to keep it all from feeling predictable. If you're into games like Backpack Hero, Loop Hero, or even Children of Morta, this one lands somewhere in the middle. A lighter mood, but no less serious about its mechanics. It's the kind of game that sneaks up on you. You come for the cute cats, you stay because your brain is quietly addicted to organizing your backpack and squeezing every last bit of power out of your gear.